Now, I am a little bit worried about the president saying, I will not accept short dealings. You know, I want something that will be solved until after 2013. That is the first time I really got very worried, because that is really not compromising. That's being too rigid. I think we could discuss this better and take short steps and get to the right solution instead of rushing into one solution that will not satisfy the people. And
but doesn't a short-term solution have embedded in it the possibility that you end up right where we are today 6 months from now or 9 months from now?
Maybe, but
right in the middle of the presidential election, by the way.
But I think it gives you more time to evaluate and to assess all the variables involved. Because, for example, now people say revenue and taxes, they equal that, and it's not true. You know, I believe in what Senator Marco Rubio said, we don't need higher taxes, we need more taxpayers, and I think that is part of the problem in the understanding. You can have a larger base of taxpayers, or you can have a very few taxpayers paying large amounts of money, and that's what the Democrats want, and the Republicans go for the first option, but nobody's going against revenues. And of course, the Republicans are being very strong in reducing the spending, and I think everybody will agree. If in your family you will be highly into debt, I think you will talk to your family and say, guys, it's time to reduce our expenses. I think anybody will do that.
And time to make more money.
If you can.
If you can. If you can. Fair point.
That is less flexible.
You know, I'd like to comment on that. You know, what is interesting right now is that our economy is actually quite fragile, right? We've seen 2 months of lackluster job performance, not looking very good, and that this debt ceiling conversation is a big distraction from the very urgent and real problems we have going on with unemployment and economic growth. And so I'm very concerned that I think, you know, the president saying, I will not do a short-term deal is really a smart thing for the economy. We need investors to know what's going on. I mean, we talk a lot about uncertainty. I think this is a big uncertainty, whether or not we're going to default on the government debt and whether or not we're going to have this conversation in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months heading towards a big contentious election.
But Heather, isn't it also a fundamental philosophical conversation to have? You say that it's a distraction, but doesn't this also pit two ideas about what government should be, what it should do, what the right amount of taxation is from an economy overall, those kinds of big questions that we rarely have the opportunity to really take on?
100%. You know, there are two things going on right now, right? On the one hand, Congress has already made a series of decisions about how much to spend and how much to take in taxes. This debt ceiling conversation is after that fact. Congress has already made the appropriations decisions and the revenue decisions, and then this debt ceiling conversation.
There's a budget for 2011.
Right, exactly. And that's the place to have this conversation. And we do need to have this this conversation about the long-term, getting our long-term fiscal house in order. That's a smart thing to do. It's certainly what Congress should be spending its time doing. I think that the real challenge here, though, is that you're sort of holding the short-term economy hostage to this long-term conversation in a way that I don't think is good for pushing the economic recovery. We need to have that conversation, but the debt ceiling is not, I don't think, fully the place to be doing that.
Maybe it's the very place to be doing it, because we got up to 14.24 trillion somehow, and one of the ways we got there was by just saying, well, we need to raise it again, and just raising it again. And postponing the really tough conversation about whether it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the debt limit is this completely arbitrary way of implementing that. As Heather said, it's something that comes in after the fact, after you've already made all the decisions, right? So the members of Congress can claim credit for increasing spending, they can claim credit for cutting taxes, and then later on it gives them an opportunity to stand up as though they don't like debt. If you look at the way debt limit battles have worked out in the past, it ends up being a very partisan thing where the people in power bear the burden of passing a debt limit increase, whereas the people out of power get to demagogue it. And so it doesn't seem to be a thing that historically leads to good budget decisions. In principle, we have a budget process that Congress is supposed to go through that's completely overshadowed at the moment by this looming deadline. Understandably, because if you don't do something by the time this deadline hits, bad things will happen to the economy. But it doesn't seem to me, at least, to be a rational way to actually have these conversations, which are very important, right? We should have these conversations about the size of government, the scope of government in elections, and then we should have them each year through the congressional budget process.